your slide that you have put your first and last name so that we know who you are. Again, in this current state that we are in, unfortunately, we have to ask you to do that. Please mute yourself so our fabulous speakers today can
When
be.
that goes down, the
Jerome.
video is on or not, so you just have to click.
Okay. That's why we ask you to mute yourselves.
Okay, thank you. I have this question about how we should vote for the school.
If you have a conversation with someone, please be sure that you use the chat room. If you want to share something with everyone, you can also use the chat room. That would be wonderful. If you have to get up, or Nelson, if you're not done with your breakfast yet, or you need to get up and stretch, please use your stop video button and then start it again so that we can see you. Here. Sorry. We respectfully acknowledge that statewide we are on the ancestral homelands of the indigenous nations that have inhabited these lands since time immemorial, including the Akshin, Akamel Odom, Apache, Colorado River, Fort Mojave, Gila River, Havasupai, Hopi, Wallapai, Navajo, Paiute, Pima, Peepash, Wet'suwet'en, Yaqui, and Yavapai peoples. There are 22 recognized tribes in Arizona. Their traditional care and honoring of these lands allow us to be here today. There is the calm before the storm because 2024 is an election year. Please do all you can through whichever party you are a member of. In Arizona, there are 30 legislative districts. Those LDs are looking forward to having you help with phone calls, mailings, door-to-door canvassing, whatever you can do to help get the people that we want elected. The Maricopa County Democratic Party, I've put their number up there, but if you can't scribble fast enough, they are listed when you go to Google. Same with the Arizona Democratic Party. However many hours, whatever you are willing to do, there is a place for you to help get people elected in 2024. So please contact them. Today, we have three fabulous speakers. Mayor Kate Gallego from the city of Phoenix is going to be our first speaker. And as you know, she and the city of Phoenix have tremendous influence all through Arizona and in fact, throughout the country. Sandy Bahr is our go-to love the earth person. She is the chair of the Grand Canyon Sierra Club, which has done incredible work here in Arizona. And David Pepper, who's coming for us from Cincinnati, is going to talk about Laboratories of Autocracy, and you will be amazed. In November, because it's Indigenous Peoples Month, we have Dr. Millicent Pepion, who's with Red Data Consulting, and she's going to talk about a lot of Indigenous people's issues. And Dr. Crystal Lee, who is the United Nations consul on tribal issues, and she's going to talk about tribal health and healing. So please join us in November. There's no program in December because we're all too busy decorating and running around with December events. And now we have notes from our chair, Linda Ambrose. Linda. You're muted.
I just unmuted, I think. Hi there. So hello and welcome to our October Blue Tuesday Forum, which happens to fall on Halloween. So may I wish you and yours a safe and happy Halloween. We may be able to say farewell to all the horror and scary shows on TV and the movies until next year, but sadly, we are still stuck with many goons and ghouls in real life who are creating very frightening horror shows of their own, all of which seem to promise to continue throughout this year and next. These dastardly greedy and some downright evil characters are doing everything in their power to kill our democracy in America. Stating the obvious, the most wicked of all these ghouls would be Orange Man Trump, who has devolved enough to even look like a devil. He is most responsible for leading the slow-moving coup that continues to eradicate democracy in America. I believe the transfer of power in a democracy is as seriously in jeopardy today as it was on January 6, 2021. Taking this one step further, yes, his planned insurrection failed, but he and his MAGA followers have since been openly, as well as surreptitiously, taking away voting rights and changing state laws to allow voting results be changed to the discretion of Republican-led state houses or Republican state attorney generals for the upcoming 2024 election. Furthermore, let us be clear, even if Trump is somehow unable to run for president, his MAGA goons are still alive and well and have no plans of withdrawing from America's political scene. A great example of such a goon that we previously knew little about is Mike Johnson, the newly elected Republican majority leader in the House, making him the third in line to become the next president of the United States. He has already made it abundantly clear that he holds many very radical and scary, life-threatening views that he plans to push through Congress. Just for starters, he's anti-abortion with no excuses. He's anti-gay and wishes them to be retrained. And he is and has been an election denier since 2020. Adding one more bullet to his gun, his reaction to the latest killing spree of 18 people in Lewistown, Maine, says it all about taking no responsibility to stand up to the NRA's powerful killing machine. His words were, and I'm quoting, "The problem is not the AR-15 guns, it's in the hearts of the killers." That places him in the ghoul category for me. Moving on with the Halloween theme, we are living close to other horror stories, these involving war. We have witnessed from afar the evil Russian leader Putin continuing on his rampage of the killing fields in Ukraine. The destruction of the Ukrainian people and their homeland continues to be a world nightmare that doesn't seem to end. And now we are bearing witness to another escalation of war in another part of the world, in the Mideast, with the Palestinian terrorist group, Hamas, bombing and attacking Israel, costing thousands of lives, while simultaneously taking and holding several hundred hostages. My understanding is that this was a long-planned attack by Hamas, timed to halt the possible impending peace agreement with the Saudis and the Israelis. Israel waited for a time to respond with retaliatory bombings in the Gaza region.
You're muted.
I don't know why. I think someone doesn't want to hear this. I have to tell you, I know it's not the happiest theme, but it will change in a minute.
Are you unmuted now?
I'm unmuted now, thank you. I don't know where I left off that you couldn't hear me, but
Palestinians being killed.
okay. thousands of Palestinians have been killed. We know this. We must remember through all of this that without taking sides, there has been horrific mass shooting. And now, and I should say suffering, much beyond shooting. And now it may be escalating more as Iran has supported the Hamas with weapons while also threatening the US to stand down. This because the US president and his administration has been attempting to keep the peace between the fighting sides, offering monetary military aid to enable Israel to protect itself, while also sending desperately needed supplies of medicine, food, water, and clothing to the escaped Palestinian refugees along the borders of neighboring countries. Two more facts I most urge us to remember. Number one, Hamas and other Arab terrorist groups teach the Palestinians to not only hate the Jews, but that they must also eradicate all Jews. And two, Palestinians are not all Hamas and other Arab terrorist groups. Many are simply poor people trying to survive because they are not helped by their very weak and ineffective government leaders. I apologize for trying to summarize a most complex, complicated, and long historical war between these factions in the Mideast. There are so many differing points of view on this war. I only attempted to relay what I did in order to point out that this is a growing horror story and one that must be so very closely monitored and appeased by other global powers around the world. The other reason I presented this horrific war in the first place is to show how much we need a real grown-up in the room of any possible negotiators, and that would be our current president, President Biden. Can we imagine what our past president would have done in this Mideast conflict? The abhorrent Trump might have already led us into a World War III. It would seem that many of the MAGA goons are totally uninformed of the world outside their cocoon, so they have no understanding of what's at stake if they successfully pillage their way into making their orange evil ghoul the next president. Therefore, we have to make sure that Biden is reelected as president to aid in ending all our war stories. He's not old, he's a grown-up elder. And boy, do we need to make that abundantly clear in this next election year ahead. But back to my Halloween theme. I would like to end these abhorrent reminders and get us out of that mire into our next fast approaching holiday, Thanksgiving. Because I frankly feel that the best way to survive these horror stories which seem to daily face us is to practice early and daily. Excuse me, my throat. Is to practice early and daily what we do most especially at Thanksgiving time, practicing gratitude for any and all of our blessings, where we get to live, where we get and what we get to hope for, who we get to love, and how we get to serve. Let's practice gratitude in every way possible, and then, when we can, give our time and monies as much as we possibly can to our Democratic candidates who are sincerely and courageously running to represent us, also known as the United States and the American people. I would like to end with a hands up to our forthcoming speaker, Sandy Bahr, who has been one of my heroes for a long time. She has been a Blue Tuesday speaker numerous times and a friend to those of us in Blue Tuesday for a while, and now she has been the chapter director of Sierra Club for 25 years, as Janie pointed out, serving since 1998. Sandy does not take that title lightly, as she has committed her life to protecting our state and country's environment. She spends most every day of her life either tenaciously fighting for some bill or environmental protection, or educating our state and national legislators as well as our public. She walks her talk. Thank you, Sandy. I see you there. Thank you for giving us so much of yourself to the planet we live on. We are indebted to you, Sandy. And I know Janie will be introducing you soon. So I end now and thank you all for caring. In gratitude. Thank you. And Janie, ready to introduce Kate, our Mayor Kate.
Yes, thank you. Excuse me. Well, I'd like to say our first guest speaker needs no introduction, but I don't think everybody is aware of everything that Mayor Kate Gallego has done, not just for the city of Phoenix, but her influence has influenced other big cities and small cities in Arizona and in other states as well. We are really proud of her. And I live in Chandler. I'm so proud of Kate Gallego. Mayor Kate Gallego has a vision for Phoenix. She sees it as a place that is vibrant and growing, and one where every person is treated with dignity and respect. Mayor Gallego is a strong advocate for smart business growth and investment. She recently helped land the city's largest ever business development deal, a $40 billion semiconductor manufacturing plant that'll bring significant economic development for decades to come. She's leading the city to global status as a leader in bioscience, technology, research, and advanced manufacturing. The mayor is also leading Phoenix to meet its goal to become the most sustainable desert city in the United States. She has fostered investments in cool solutions, including the nation's first publicly funded Office of Heat Response and Mitigation. Boy, did we need that this summer. Launched the city's successful cool pavement pilot and led the charge toward building the necessary East Valley infrastructure to support a sustainable future. Mayor Gallego is the second elected female mayor in Phoenix history and one of the youngest big city mayors in the United States. In November of 2020, she was returned to office with the highest number of votes ever cast for a mayoral candidate in Phoenix. A graduate of Harvard University, she earned an MBA from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. She was elected to the Phoenix City Council in 2013, representing South Phoenix and the city's downtown core. Prior professional pursuits include strategic planning and economic development for one of Arizona's largest utility companies and service in state government as part of the governor's team. Mayor Kate Gallego enjoys a desert hike and a good read. She is mom to 6-year-old Michael. It is with delight and pride that I introduce Mayor Kate Gallego. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Wonderful. It is so fabulous to be back at Blue Tuesday. Thank you for having me yet again. There are so many friends on this Zoom, so I am glad to see all of you virtually. For those of you who don't know me, I'm about to hit 20 years of involvement with the Arizona Democratic Party, first as a very junior staffer of the Legislative Caucus. And I have been working with Janie just about that entire time. So it was very fun to have you do the introduction. Today is also special because it is Mail Your Ballot Day. So maybe a form of election day for us in Phoenix and for so many of our school leaders. And I'll talk a little bit about what we have on the ballot in a moment. But first wanted to start with a shout out to my fabulous colleagues from Fountain Hills. All of the cities in Arizona work together very closely. And I particularly have gotten time to spend time with Ginny Dickey, Mayor Ginny Dickey. I first met her when she was working at the Department of Environmental Quality, and I was doing a lot of volunteering in the environmental space. So Mayor Dickey, thank you for being here with us. Tomorrow is also a special day for us, as the regional transportation plan will be referred to the voters tomorrow, and it'll have a higher level of support for public transit than the current plan. So we're very excited for that progress. It'll be at the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors if anyone is interested, we can share later that information, as there'll be some more right-wing folks there advocating against it. And that will be on the ballot in 2024. But why don't we start with the ballot that will go forth on November 7th, since today is the day to mail ballots, and it is basically an all-mail election, although one could vote in person if you really wanted to. We have a $500 million general obligation bond. If you live in Phoenix, you may be familiar with some of our past bond projects. Burton Bahr Library is one. We would not have the downtown biomedical campus without a previous bond. And then we've just built basic things like neighborhood fire stations and those upgrades. One of the things I wanted to talk about, especially since Sandy is here as well, is there's a real trend of sustainability throughout the bond. So all of the projects, whether they're libraries or fire stations, will be built with heat in mind and have cool building materials, including nature-based infrastructure and cool roofs. So we are excited about that. The projects include land redevelopment along the riverfront to try to invest in that green space and reclaim our riparian areas along the riverfront, as well as a new medical school with Arizona State University. So the 2006 bond helped bring us a medical school in partnership with U of A, but we love all of our higher education universities, and so this one will be with ASU, and with a particular focus on medical devices and engineering, as we have so much need for medical professionals, from nurses to doctors to technicians. So we're excited that the bond includes those types of educational partnerships. Unfortunately, our Arizona legislature cut higher education funding this year, but we are going to find ways to get it done through non-traditional modes. The bond also includes investments in renewable energy, energy efficiency, as well as our park system. I'm very proud that Phoenix has more acres of parks than any other city in the United States. Some of those parks have made important history. For example, Telegraph Pioneers Park in North Phoenix was the first barrier-free park, so really accessible to people with disabilities. And it is now decades old, so we're trying to make upgrades so that that will meet more modern standards and needs. South Mountain Park turns 100 next year, and the bond includes some investments in that park as well. So it really is from north to south. There's significant funding for mental health facilities and affordable housing, as well as some upgrades to our senior center. So exciting opportunity for that election to go forward. Turnout, unfortunately, is around 10%. So I imagine that is not the folks who are here today, but if you know people who have not voted, we would welcome reminders to friends and family. It's 4 votes in the city of Phoenix. It keeps the tax rate the same. We also have school district bonds and overrides in almost every part of Phoenix and many parts of the valley. We already had a little bit of dialogue in the chat about one of the school bonds in Scottsdale, which does include some Phoenix-based schools, and one that I am supporting. So I would definitely encourage you to look at all of the school initiatives as well. The way we fund schools in Arizona is not ideal, and so the voters have to give them permission to grow their budget, even when they are growing very quickly. And then they also need the same capital investments we need at the city, but for everything from classroom facilities to technology upgrades. So lots of good opportunities to be involved in the November 7th election. And I will take a few questions at the end, but I got request to talk about sustainability, which is a wonderful theme for today's meeting and very important to always, but on perhaps even more our minds after the summer that we had in Arizona. We are definitely ground zero for climate change work. The city of Phoenix has a lot of emissions around transportation, and so we're trying to do work in that area, including reducing the emissions of our own fleet, whether it be electric buses or more traditional city vehicles. We are trying to build more ability to charge. We're also trying to make it easier to walk. So we are redesigning city streets to be more comfortable and shaded. We have a goal for 75% shade in our heavily walked areas, such as downtown and along light rail. And we know it's not going to make the summer go away, but it can make 10 degrees difference. We also get similar great benefits from tree planting. President Biden and his administration just gave us a $10 million grant for tree planting. If you are involved with any nonprofits can apply for our grants for planting trees. And we also have a great program called Canopies for Kids for schools who want to plant trees. It's a great chance to teach young people about science and have them make an investment that they'll be able to see grow throughout their lives. I know we have several educators here, so if you have good connections for us, we are particularly interested in getting them into lower income areas. We've mapped out the city and found that, which you probably could have figured out without a map, we have more green, lush tree canopy in the wealthier areas, and we have more challenges in lower income areas. So we are trying to plant trees in corridors where we think people will be walking a lot, such as between schools and libraries, and are very excited for the progress in that area. We are working on green building materials. Some of that is how we manage our water when it floods. We've had some rough events, and we know more natural ecosystems can be more resilient. We are also doing a cool pavement program where we put a lighter colored sealant on city streets, and that can have about a 10-degree impact as well, because it's not the asphalt absorbing as much heat overnight. We had some rough, very high overnight temperatures. So we think building materials are one of the things we can do to reduce urban heat. We're also working on the economic development side to attract more green jobs. Thanks to President Biden and his efforts to invest in green infrastructure, we are seeing more companies that would have manufactured in Asia now building in Phoenix. In Maryville, a company, JA Solar, is hiring 600 folks to do solar manufacturing. In North Phoenix, a sheet metal facility that had been shut down is now coming back to life and hiring technicians to build electric vehicle charging. And they were able to offer jobs to anyone who worked at the sheet metal facility who was still interested in coming back. So rehire people who had lost their jobs. The city of Phoenix really wants to be on the forefront of climate green jobs, as well as the resurgence of American manufacturing. So we've had some good news in that area, and just, it's so neat to see people and talk to people who lost their jobs and now have them back doing really meaningful work that will help address our climate and ozone challenges as well. So lots of good news in that area. And I understand we have time for 2 to 3 questions if I stop now. So maybe I'll turn it back to, is it Janie will moderate questions? Or
Yes, I certainly will. Before we do that, I remember, years ago, probably 2010, when Biden, who was at that point vice president, said, "Don't tell me your values, show me your budget." And I think if anybody has personified that in public office, it's been you. And we see our values in your budget, in your efforts. And thank you so much for doing that, because as I've said many times before, it's not just the city of Phoenix. You have impacted all the cities in Arizona and other states as well. So if there are questions, let's see, if you can put them in chat, we can take them from there. And Mayor Gallego, make sure that Kevin checks the chat, because there are a lot of wonderful statements for you. Let's see, maybe I can go to gallery. And if you have a question, raise your hand. And okay, Linda Ambrose, make sure you unmute.
It has a mind of its own, however, but yes, thank you. And again, thank you. I say everything Janie just said. You're such a role model and example as well for mayors that we want to continue. Please. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I wondered about the homelessness situation. We hear a lot on the news about all of the problems with having to move from the particular center they were sort of had made for themselves. Is there a future plan how one and Phoenix will be able to handle the homelessness, since we seem to attract so many because of our weather, but in the summer, of course, that's a different story. So is there a future plan in the budget at all for this?
So a perfect question for this week. There is, I think, $60 million for affordable housing in the bond, and that's to build out projects such as Edison Eastlake, which is near the airport, where we're trying to build a mixed income affordable housing on what was pretty dilapidated public housing. They're also trying to put different innovative tools, including making plans available for people who want to build affordable housing quickly. We've made land available for nonprofits and other partners who want to build affordable housing. So there's some supply work. The bond also includes facilities for community assistance program, which is social workers and other people with a real public health perspective to be built throughout the city, so that when you call 911 and addiction or behavioral health or homelessness is really the center of the call, that we can have social service providers to assist and hopefully navigate to better long-term solutions. Today, those calls would go to police and firefighters in most of our city. And so we want to have the first responder system to be more robust because in many cases, what you really need is long-term connection to services and someone who will have the time to understand your particular situation. So we hope that that's a very modern approach to 911. This will be an important week for the Human Service Campus, which is the area near downtown where many people live in the right-of-way. It is my belief that by Saturday, all of the folks living in the right-of-way will have a better, safer place to be. The city has opened up a wide variety of facilities with nonprofit partners, Central Arizona Shelter Services, St. Vincent de Paul, to name a few. Just yesterday, we installed additional X-Wings, which is something that's pretty unique to Phoenix. We have taken shipping containers and turned them into housing units. If you've been in our downtown, you may know we have the tallest shipping container housing in the country. It began as a market rate project, so fairly luxury apartments that were kind of fun for people who loved urban design, but focused on sustainability. And then we realized you could construct the housing much more quickly. They are primarily able to build them indoors and then install them with a crane. So it's a good quality of, or a better quality of life for our construction workers, because they can do it through the summer in a more indoor setting. These X-Wing shipping container housing units operate on solar energy, and they made it through July without being connected to the grid. So July was our hottest month with a huge need for air conditioning and to have enough solar to make it through. And that was a really hard test. So we were really impressed that they made it. And then the city started ordering more and more of these to try to get good housing options. They've been quite popular and people have been very interested in taking options. We've also purchased or rented several hotels and done hotels to housing, as well as doing built from the ground up. So it will be thousands of people housed, but this week, hundreds, we think, will get housing. And so we're not claiming victory. There's still going to be a lot of work to do, but if you have not been near the Human Service Campus next week, I think you will see a very different perspective. And again, still more work to do. We are not in charge of mental health, and so we need the county and state to provide more therapeutic beds for people experiencing addiction and other challenges, but we know with the social worker as the governor, we have the will. So we are hopeful for good results in that area.
And just thank you so much for your wonderful answer. And the last question I would have as an addendum to that is, we keep hearing Republicans talk about gun problems are all mental health, and that there's never any money really put forward for social working with the mental health issues with homelessness. And many homeless people don't want it, but they need it. So is there any way in which you would be able to move that forward? And what about the funding for that
So
possibility?
decades ago, the city gave up our taxing authority for public health, but we've had to start doing more, in part because other branches of government have not. We have asked the Attorney General for some of the opioid settlement money that the state received to help, because we have a huge challenge with fentanyl among those experiencing homelessness. And it's been, I guess a little therapy moment for me, but it's been a little tough with some of our Republican elected officials. For example, Matt Gress, who represents part of Phoenix, has opposed Scottsdale building, or not even building, just using some existing facilities for people who need housing. Phoenix has built 78% of the shelter beds since COVID, but we do not have, we're a third of the county. So we feel like we could get so much more done if others would step up. And it's hard when you have a mayor like Scottsdale Mayor Ortega, who's trying to do so and gets pushback from their elected officials. Mayor Dickey has tried to lead in that area and has, I'll let her tell her own story, but she might be able to commiserate on that. At the moment, we have a real challenge with evictions in Maricopa County. Our laws here are very friendly to landlords and not to tenants. I believe only there's only 3 cities. I think it's Mesa, Tempe, and Phoenix that have more beds for people to go to than evictions. So, if you're evicted on the west side, you don't have a lot of options, and often people will be taken in by Phoenix service providers, but we need those service providers to serve people in Phoenix. The legislature did appropriate money for a west side shelter, but then no one would cite it, so it came to Phoenix, because we have been willing to step up and say we need facilities for those who are vulnerable to be housed. So there's a little bit of a political challenge.
Yes.
Right now, and nowhere near the amount of support we need for people facing addiction. We have such an acute need right now, and not enough therapeutic programs.
Thank you again for that.
Yes,
response.
thank you so much.
There's a question from Linda Edwards. Linda Edwards, go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
Hi, I'm glad that you're doing so much for the homeless people. And thank you for that. The question that I have is, I've been on the Nextdoor site, which is a variety of my neighbors, and they have complained about the trash that's alongside the highways, at the entrances and exits. And I have seen the same thing. I'm wondering what sorts of programs you have that are working on those right now.
Wonderful. So generally the highways are administered by the state of Arizona, the Arizona Department of Transportation. And so the governor and legislature are the lead, but we certainly do a lot of cleanups in the city. We have a great partnership with Keep Phoenix Beautiful, which is very, very close to me at City Hall, and they lead our cleanup efforts. They also helped us with community beautification, such as tree planting or sometimes art amenities to make communities more attractive. So we have invested in more resources at the city to do cleanups along the streets. And then we have a great Adopt a Street program if you'd like to be involved with a neighborhood cleanup. We have cleanup kits if neighborhood leaders want to do community building and fun volunteering events in their neighborhood, and we can help with everything from safety equipment to some neighborhoods sometimes need clean up a lot and need like one of those city dumpsters. So we can help in that way. We have people whose jobs are at the city to kind of go around and help with lights that are out or graffiti busters. And so there's several different solutions depending on what the need is. And we'd certainly welcome if you want to talk to the state about more funding for freeway cleanups as well.
Would it be possible to combine some of the efforts that you have used with the homeless people to provide them with some assistance in jobs and doing some of the cleanups? Just a thought.
We have several programs, probably the largest is with PRM that are already doing that. So people who are looking for jobs can get cleaned up, get job. People experiencing homelessness can get jobs doing cleanups. And we have a general one and then one particularly focused on the SRP canals right now. So that if you
Good.
know people interested, they are hiring.
Great. Thank you.
We have a last question from Melanie Hobden, but before I have her ask her question, I want to read this post in the chat from Mayor Ginny Dickey. She says, Mayor Gallego is now the chair of the Maricopa Association of Governments, and while not many people are aware of the important work done at MAG, that's not MAGA, they benefit from it every day in air quality, housing, and of course, planning and transportation. The bipartisanship there demonstrates the real progress that can be made when we work together, and Kate is the perfect leader for this group. Ta-da! All right, Melanie, would you like to ask your question, please?
Sure, and it may be naive, sorry about this, Mayor, but can we use any of the state-owned containers that were part of the wall on housing? I see so many commercial parcels that are vacant at very cool intersections that could have some of the stackable stuff going on. So could we do something like that maybe?
So I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe it depends on the quality of the shipping container. As some of you may have seen, some of the ones Ducey put along the wall toppled and got some damage to them. And so they are not always in the shape we need. We need pretty decent shape shipping containers. We add insulation to them, but they have to, if they get dented or so, they don't work as well for housing. So I think some, but not all would probably be the right answer, but very creative thinking. Thank you.
Thanks again for being a guest speaker today, Mayor Gallego, and again, appreciation and affection for everything that you do, not just for Phoenix, but for Arizona and other states as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for having me, and happy Halloween and ballot mail day. I have a young pterodactyl. My 6-year-old will be a pterodactyl this year.
Oh,
I'll
love
close
seeing
with that cute image.
Thank you. All right. Our next speaker, who's already received several shout outs and for good reason, is Sandy Bahr. She's the director of the Grand Canyon, Arizona chapter of Sierra Club, where her responsibilities include advocating for environmental protection, equity, and democracy, including climate action and justice, with various state and federal agencies, conducting research, developing and evaluating policies, conducting grassroots outreach, and organizing, developing, and implementing priority projects, fundraising and budget development, and supervising staff, among others. Originally from Michigan, she's made the Sonoran Desert her home for more than 30 years and worked actively on environmental protection issues in Arizona for the past 29, both as a volunteer and as staff for various organizations. Sandy monitors and advocates on environmental protection, clean energy, and climate justice at the Arizona Legislature, the Arizona Corporation Commission, and various state and federal agencies. She's received a number of awards for her work, including the 2016 Scrapping Bear Award from the Arizona chapter of the Wildlife Society for her advocacy work relative to wildlife. the Arizona Interfaith Power and Light 2017 SAGE, or Spirited Activist Greening the Earth Award, the Arizona Capital Times 2018 recognition for Best Activist, and the 2019 Best Environmental Recognition from Phoenix New Times. Sandy has an associate's degree in applied science in civil engineering, a bachelor's in environmental studies, and a master's in legal studies. It is my delight to introduce Sandy Bahr.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. And thanks, I think maybe she hopped off. Thanks, Mayor Gallego. Glad to hear of all the work, especially regarding people who are unhoused. That's such an important issue. I have some slides I'm going to share. So let me do that. And in the intro, or in keeping with the theme of Halloween, I'm going to talk about some things that are kind of scary today, but I'm not going to only talk about what's scary. I'm going to talk about what we can do. So happy Halloween again, and thanks again for having me here today. So I'm going to touch upon these various issues, including the climate emergency, clean energy, water, wildlife, public lands, work on Grand Canyon, borderlands, and equity, inclusion, and environmental justice. And within all of these is important work on democracy, because we cannot have a healthy environment without a healthy democracy. And of course, we saw that firsthand with one of the people you were talking about earlier, Donald Trump. Under his leadership, shall we say, our environment and our climate suffered enormously, as did our democracy. So let me talk a little bit first about climate and clean energy. And I am going to give you some of the scary stuff first, and that is climate by the numbers. And so I guess the first number is not scary, but something for us to think about, and that's how many planets can sustain humanity. That's just one, the one we're on. 2.7, that's the degrees Fahrenheit amount we're trying to keep the planet from warming, and unfortunately we are on track to exceed that. 31, those are the number of days in a row that it hit 110 degrees Fahrenheit this summer. So those were not the total days, but just the days in a row here in Phoenix. 40, that's the percentage of people of color who live in more polluted air than white communities across the US, and also the percentage of Black people that are more likely than others to live in places where extreme temperatures will cause their death. And 43, that's the percentage of people who are Latinx, who are more likely to live in communities that will lose work hours because of intense heat. 45, that's the percentage we need to reduce our emissions by 2030 in order to reach net zero by 2050, which is what the scientists say we need to do. And then, of course, we had 54 total days here in Phoenix that exceeded 110 degrees in 2023. That was a new record. 417.06, that's the parts per million that the global average atmospheric carbon dioxide, that's what we had in 2022, and that number will go up in 2023. 469, that's the confirmed heat dust in Maricopa County to date. We could add as many as 153 more. And of course, this is something to give us pause. You know, there's a lot of work going on, but these deaths are preventable. We need to do better. We need to acknowledge it's hotter, that we're getting climate change, and do our best to get that number to 0. And then 8,500, those are the excess deaths in a typical year. And this is not just in Arizona due to warming. That's expected to go as high as 60,000 by 2050. So again, we need to do a lot better. More than 1 million, those are the species that are at risk due to climate change. 70 billion, that's how much it costs a lot of smaller countries to deal with climate change, and that's expected to grow to 300 billion by 2030, which isn't that far off. And then I'll end with just this big number, 178 trillion, and that's the amount that our inaction on climate change could cost us over the next 50 years. So we often hear talk about how much climate change, addressing climate change costs, but the inaction is a lot more costly and will be more costly to our kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. So here in Arizona, we have some climate challenges, including inaction and harmful actions at the Arizona Corporation Commission and Salt River Project. Both of the, I point to both of these entities because SRP is not regulated by the Corporation Commission. And then of course the Corporation Commission has a lot to do with what happens at Arizona Public Service, Tucson Electric Power, and some of the other utilities. Right now, the ACC is looking at devaluing rooftop solar. They opened up a docket on that. And so looking at paying people even less going forward for the electricity they generate for the grid. They're going forward with the siting of big gas plants, including the expansion of the Coolidge generating station, which is also something SRP is involved with. And then there's just been inaction on promoting clean energy, and they continue to approve these rate increases for the utilities to continue funding fossil fuel projects. And they are refusing to fund transition for coal impacted communities, something that we're still working on. And then SRP is proposing to expand the Coolidge gas plant by 575 megawatts, basically doubling it. And then on top of that, proposing to add another 2,000 megawatts of new gas by 2035. They have no retirement date for Springerville 4, one of its coal units, the only utility in the state not to. And they have the weakest carbon standard of any of the major utilities. So a lot of work that needs to be done both at the ACC and with SRP. Some things that you can do is go ahead and contact SRP and let them know that you would like to see them reduce their reliance on gas and instead look at a people's energy plan, which is we modeled it and demonstrated how they could meet their load growth needs with increased energy efficiency and clean energy. And then, of course, we want to also stop that Coolidge gas plant expansion. There is an easy link for sending a message, and I'll share the slides so you have that. And then with the ACC, of course, I won't get into details here, but we really could use some different people there. And then we need them to require APS in the current rate case to do more for communities that have been affected by coal, including on the Navajo Nation and Hopi, as well as communities around Joseph City where the Cholla coal plant is. And we can also ask the legislature to invest more in economic transition for coal impacted communities. There was some funding in the state budget this last time, and so that was helpful. I don't know if we'll be able to get some again, but it would be nice to add to that 9 million. And then there are lots of opportunities to help address climate change around what the Governor's Office of Resiliency is doing, especially their work to ensure that we are getting our fair share of the Inflation Reduction Act dollars. There are a number of grants that they have applied for already and will be. There's funding for people with lower incomes to have access to solar. And there is a great deal of funding for rebates and other programs for investing in energy efficiency to bring down people's energy load. And then we also have an opportunity to really push the Biden administration to get on with it with finalizing some of these rules to address emissions, including the rule on power plants. It needs to be stronger, so our existing gas plants are included, and it needs to go forward soon. And then some other climate opportunities is there is a weekly climate coalition meeting that is led by Hazel Chandler. If you don't know her, she is an amazing activist who has worked with Moms Clean Air Force, Elders Climate Action, and many other groups. And she leads those meetings on Fridays, so I encourage you to get involved with that. We also have an energy and climate action team that meets on the 4th Tuesday of every month. I'm gonna skip to water here and talk a little bit some of the challenges. Probably the biggest challenge we have on water is the Arizona legislature and their failure to address many of these issues. We definitely are a dry place. We've always had an over-allocated Colorado River drought. We're not going to be able to address in the short term, but some of the things like excessive groundwater pumping, both inside and outside active management areas, and the fact that we're drying up our rivers. These are things that we could do something about if the legislature chose to. So some of the things that we need to happen is have more transparency and inclusion in our water policies and legislation. We need recognition of the laws of physics and the connection between ground and surface water. And we need to enact policies to actually measure and limit groundwater pumping throughout Arizona, not just inside active management areas. And here's some specifics on some of the legislation that has actually been introduced, but we need to really make sure it happens. And that is to require metering and limits on pumping groundwater outside the active management areas. That is not happening now, and there's a lot of opposition to it. Promote more low water use agriculture. There are grandfathered rights that are contributing to overpumping. Reform of the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District, which is an entity that was set up by and for developers and works really well for them, but not for sustainability. And every use should have to have an adequate water supply. That's something that we could enact as well. You'd like to see environmental ecological water recognized. So the river itself has a right to water. We have dried up a lot of our rivers and streams. We need to figure out a better way to keep them flowing. And you can get involved in Arizona Water Sentinels. That's a program we have to help monitor a couple of our rivers, the San Pedro and the Verde rivers. We also do a lot of work in the Rio Salado, which Mayor Gallego was talking about earlier. Phoenix has a beautiful stretch of the river that there are hiking paths and bike paths, and we try to go in and help clean it up and dig out invasive plants. And how am I doing on time? Am I almost out? I'll just
well, no.
oh, okay. I just am checking. I didn't want to.
No. You've
Yeah.
got about 3 to 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna run through this fast because I want to make sure people can ask questions. So we do, you know, in addition to having a climate crisis, we do have a species extinction crisis. In addition to species that have gone into decline because of our actions, whether it's lead ammunition, like for the condor, or by killing off prairie dogs as for the black-footed ferret, or just direct eradication as we did with the Mexican gray wolf. We now, on top of that, have climate that is contributing to extinction of species. Condors, a key need is to eliminate harmful lead ammunition, something we've been working on for a while, and maybe petitioning Game and Fish on this in the coming months. So stay tuned on that. These birds have also been at risk to bird flu. More than 20 birds died this year. And gray wolves, Mexican gray wolves, need a lot more flexibility in their management. They're constrained by artificial boundaries, and there are lots of things you can do to help wolves. We have a wildlife activist group if you want to find out more about these species and others, and we also get involved in service projects where we help Wild at Heart, give burrowing owls new homes. These are owls that have been in the path of development. I'm going to skip over 30 by 30. I wanted to mention Oak Flat. There is an event this weekend out at Oak Flat. It is a day of prayer, but I've been told that if you don't pray, you are also welcome to participate and be part of this effort to support Apache Stronghold in trying to save Oak Flat from this mining project by Resolution Copper. And happy to provide you more information on that. Just something really positive, give the President and Secretary Holland a quick thank you for the Baj Nuabjo Ita Kukvini Ancestral Footprints of the Grand Canyon National Monument. That was established on August 8th to protect just under 1 million acres around Grand Canyon. This is a big win and an important action. Was led by 12 tribes, and those 12 tribes will also be involved in the management of the monument. And border walls, very bad for people, wildlife, water, and they cost a lot. We just heard a little bit about Doug Ducey's debacle with the containers, which the public paid for to install and is paying for to uninstall, and I guess they're trying to recoup a little bit of money by selling some of them, but really bad news. The president recently did use waiver in Texas for border wall. We're very disappointed in that action, and so we hope people will continue to tell them that's unacceptable. And then, of course, the biggest challenge in our state probably is the Arizona legislature. I don't know, the CorpCom is bad too, but if you want to find out a little bit more about how they did this past session, check out our report card. We do that every session. And you can see that there are still a lot of Fs down here. It was very much along partisan lines. The Democrats who got lower grades, to be honest with you, that was mostly because of missed votes. So I just wanted to call that out. And just wanted to let you know we have weekly updates. We do Zoom updates, but also send out weekly updates during the session. You can sign up there and it tells you actions you can take throughout the session. And don't give up. We need to keep pushing, but we also need to try to deliver a better legislature. And I know a lot of you are working really hard on that. I just wanted to express my appreciation for that. So that's it. Thank you. And I would be happy to answer questions.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, Sandy. I'm sorry.
Send them in the chat and I'll answer them there.
But
Okay.
the website is fabulous. And whatever you feel about anti-racism, balance, collaboration, justice, transformation, and conserving, protecting, and caring for our planet, if it touches any of those values, please go to the Sierra Club website and find out what you can do. Whatever your time allowance is, you'll find something that you can do to help those values. Sandy, thank you again. I'm going to ask you to put the links that were on your slides, if you can, into the chat room so people can copy and paste those. Thank you so much. And our third speaker today is from Cincinnati, Ohio, which is a wonderful testament to our being on Zoom. David Pepper is a lawyer, writer, democracy activist, former elected official, and adjunct professor, and served as the chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party between 2015 and 2021. His recent nonfiction works dissect the attack on democracy taking place in states like Ohio and guide everyday citizens on steps they can take to lift democracy. Pepper is the author of 4 novels: A Simple Choice, The People's House, The Wingman, and The Voter File, that integrate real-world politics and fiction. They probably read like a horror story in today's politics. Pepper's book, Laboratories of Autocracy, has been called arguably the most important recent book on American democracy by Salon magazine, and his follow-up book, Saving Democracy, A User's Manual, published this year, has been widely praised and featured on MSNBC, CNN, C-SPAN, and other and other networks. The Wall Street Journal named Pepper one of the best political thriller writers on the scene. Following the publication Laboratories of Autocracy, he's engaged in a growing national conversation about voting rights and the attacks on democracy. And David, thank you so much for being our guest today. I have signed up for the Pepperspectives, and I get these on email. They're not newsletters. They are videos. They are all kinds of things that keep you up to date on what's attacking, who's attacking democracy, and what you can do about it. So I've put the website up there, David Pepper at substack.com, and I will also put it in the chat. I would love for everyone today to get on his mailing list. It's really awesome. Thank you for joining us today, David.
Thank you. Wow, that was very nice. Appreciate you mentioning that. I have had a lot of fun with this Substack, and you're right. Mine is not sort of just a newsletter. It's got a lot of different things coming, but I really enjoy the conversation we're having through it. So in the spirit of Sandy's sort of Halloween horror show, I'm going to present a little quickly because I know you don't have that much time, but the state of democracy, and the reason I do that, and it's the same reason we have to pay attention to climate and everything else, is until we face the problem, we're not going to solve it. And so I try and be pretty blunt spoken about the challenges we're seeing when I present the things I do in my book and my newsletter, what I'll do today. So I'm going to get quickly to a few slides and then hopefully have time for questions, but especially have time to kind of walk through this. Everyone see this slide here? So basically, and some of you may have seen this in my book, Saving Democracy, I go through this in some detail. One of the things I worry is that we've been sort of oversimplifying the political battle of America for some time. And we've all been guilty of it. I've been guilty of it. We sort of have this very sort of easy and quick summary that we're in this political battle between two sides, and there's a red side and a blue side, and they each sort of do their thing every 2 years, and one side wins and one side loses. And that just kind of keeps going. And I think the more I've written, the more I've talked, the more I think that view of what's happening is too simplistic. And in being that simplistic, it actually blinds us to what the other side's battle is. The two battles are so different, I believe, that we're better off seeing them, as I write here, as two different battles. And once we see that, I think we see what the other side is doing far more clearly than we do now. And until we see it more clearly, we will not overcome it. That's sort of my sober conclusion. But the good news is, once we do see it, we can overcome it if we adjust our strategies accordingly. So what are the two battles that are happening? The side on the left's battle, and I don't just mean left of center politically, just the left of the slide. This is Democrats. I think it's a lot of independents. It's generally the national media narrative. This side brings two assumptions to its battle. The first assumption it brings is, for a very long time, and this has changed lately, we have a conversation going where I think we acknowledge this change, but for a long time, this side has simply assumed democracy is intact and safe. Sort of a post-1960s, I would now say quite privileged view. Oh, we're America, our democracy's fine. I think we know that actually was a mistake, but that's how we fought our battle, assuming things were okay with democracy, and that's pushed us in some directions and made us blind to other things we have to be doing. Number two, though, this side actually brings to its battle a second assumption, and that assumption is that most of what it stands for actually is a majoritarian view, often very popular, supermajority, often popular. The clearest example right now is post-Dobbs. We support a woman's right to choose. Well, so do most Americans. So do most Kansans. So do most Ohioans. A majority of Kentucky voted for a woman's right to choose. Public schools, majority. Broader health care. Being responsible about dealing with climate change. Common sense gun reform. Go down the list. I mean, these are not crazy, wild-eyed, extreme views. Almost everything Joe Biden talked about in the State of the Union, middle-class based economics, unions, Social Security, all these things are majoritarian views. And so we generally know that, although sometimes we're convinced that we're somehow too extreme, but normally we actually are confident that, hey, we represent mainstream views when we put forward our agenda. And because we believe in democracy, and take it for granted, to be honest, and because we believe confidently that we have generally mainstream views, that shapes a very simple political battle for us, which is, hey, let's just go out and win elections by saying what we're for, right? I mean, that's kind of what we do. Every 2 years, we go out, we say what we're for, and we run elections. We're for broader health care. We're for common sense gun reforms. We support a woman's right to choose. But because we take democracy for granted, we've actually chosen a certain battlefield to win. And that battlefield has been federal elections, because we think if we win the federal majorities of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, that we can get a lot done. And that's true. It's been the case, and we've won those majorities, healthcare and voting rights, et cetera. But then we also very quickly, and right now you benefit from this, Ohio has for a long time, not as much now, because we're focused on federal elections, what do? We quickly focus on a few swing states and federal years. And when we win those swing states in federal years, because our battle is to win election outcomes at the federal level, we literally celebrate as if we have won the entire political battle, don't we? We know where we all were when Obama won and was in Chicago in 2008. The January 6th was a horrible interruption to it, but when Biden won and Warnock won and Ossoff won Georgia, we thought we've won our battle. We did it. Good for us. We get to do what we want to do because we won our battle. But I think we can all acknowledge that if we're honest with ourselves, that within a few months of 2020 winning, and not because of January 6th, but because of other things like you dealt with in Arizona, and within a few years of Obama winning, it didn't feel like we were winning the battle for democracy anymore, did it? Even though we had won our battle. Why is that? Well, because the other side's battle is fundamentally different. We have been celebrating winning our battle without ever looking at what the other side's battle is. What's the other side's battle? The other side's battle has the two opposite assumptions that I just mentioned that we have. One assumption they make, the exact opposite of us. They understand that democracy can be undermined. They understand that that's our nation's history. They understand that it can happen around the world. Example, Viktor Orban in Hungary. They don't only understand it, they study it. They go to Hungary and celebrate Orban. CPAC was there. Tucker Carlson went. Then they invite Orban back to Texas for a conference. Donald Trump mentioned it the other day. Now, he thought he was from Turkey, not Hungary, but they all know Orban. Why? Because he's undermining democracy. And because they know that democracy isn't just intact no matter what. It can be undermined, especially with certain institutions. But the second thing they know beyond that is they also know that this is something that we haven't really seen as clearly as we need to. Unlike us, they actually know that most of their agenda is very unpopular. They know that. Mitch McConnell was under no illusion after Dobbs that banning abortion was unpopular. Lindsey Graham wanted a national abortion ban, and Mitch McConnell told him, not in this Senate, you're not bringing that thing. Because he knew they would lose, just like Mehmet Oz did lose when he explained that he thought abortion should come down to a woman, a doctor, and the local elected official. That was the end of his election. So the Koch brothers know this. Mitch McConnell told Rick Scott, don't bring your Social Security plan here. They know that on a repeat level playing field, if elections become a referendum on their policy agenda, they know they would lose. They know Kansas last August would be their future, losing again and again and again, even in a conservative state like Kansas. So what does that do? Do they decide we're going to do what the side of the left does and run elections on a fair playing field? No, of course not. By saying what they're for? No, because that would be a losing strategy. What do? And this is going to sound harsh, they take their understanding and knowledge that democracy can be subverted, and their agenda, their battle, is to subvert democracy as much as needed to lock in a minority worldview that would otherwise lose an election day. That's their battle. Now, that used to sound more controversial when I first started saying it with my first book than now. People thought, wow, that's quite an accusation. But just look at them. That's what gerrymandering is, of course. That's why they study Orban. That's why they invite him here. That's why, the guy who supported J.D. Vance, his name is Peter Thiel. He wrote the words a decade ago. He thinks democracy is inconsistent with freedom, he said. And of course, if you were watching closely in Ohio in August, this terrible thing called Issue 1, their goal was to increase the threshold to amend the Constitution to 60%. Well, they did that because they know that being pro-choice is a majority view of Ohio. And they knew that we have a petition being gathered that we're going to vote on in a week. And they wanted to win by only getting to 41%. That's what they were doing. They were admitting through that vehicle that, yes, indeed, they're trying to subvert democracy to lock their unpopular worldview in place. Now, that's their battle. That's our battle. We fight our battle generally to a fault on federal swing states, and that's about it. Where do they fight their battle? They have figured out something that we need to know, and you I'm sure understand this here, but all of America needs to know. The single greatest institution for them to win their battle are the state houses of this country. I call them the Achilles heel of American governance. To quote James Carville, it's the state house is stupid. I got to go through this quick, so I won't take much time on it. Why? Because state houses control every issue we care about, including every issue that is in their agenda, from banning a woman from abortion access to what we teach in schools, which includes their ability to censor. So everything they want to do, they can do through state houses. They don't have to worry about Congress where nothing gets done. They can go to state houses where things get done all the time. And if they have a trifecta, that can be done at rapid speed and no one even knows. Number two, the state houses control democracy itself. They're the places, as you've been through, as we've been through, they're the places that control the election rules of who votes, how they vote, when they vote, how they register, you name it. And with that power, in good hands comes wonderful things like as fully representative democracy as possible. In the wrong hands, you can suppress the other side's vote. And if your worry is that you're in the minority on your views, that's a hell of a power to have to be able to suppress the votes of the majority. That's why state houses are so important to them. Number two, they also draw the district lines. And with that power, they can either create a fair democracy or they can rig the whole thing. Rig it so much, and this is what they've done. I don't have time to hold on to the suspense here. Not only do they rig it so that they are in majorities they've never earned, like Wisconsin, where a blue state, they have a supermajority. Even, by the way, on the far right here, even when the voters of Wisconsin pick a Democrat by 9 points across the state, they still have a supermajority. So gerrymandering lets them have a majority even when they're not a majority, or lets them have a much bigger majority than they've earned. Gerrymandering also has created a situation where this is kind of complicated, but they almost have no competition ever in their majorities. This is the average margin of victory over 10 years in Ohio, where 50 out of the 62 seats they drew themselves average a 20% margin of victory or more. It actually gets worse. I'll go through this down here. Not only do they have a system where they hardly are ever in close races, because Democrats don't prioritize state house seats. Look at this slide here. In many of these states, they're no longer even contested. You guys are at 32% uncontested races in 22. That's actually lower than most states, where Tennessee, 50% of the Tennessee Republicans uncontested. Oklahoma, it's higher. Georgia, it's about the same. Louisiana last week was higher. This guy, Mike, Mike Johnson, he got into this. He didn't have a race until he ran for Congress. These guys are literally in a world, because of gerrymandering and then no one running against them, they are in a world of no accountability. Well, if your goal in life is this battle I've described on the right, lock in the minority worldview, no matter what, how unpopular, the state houses I've just described are the perfect place to do it. You have control of every issue. But if you gerrymander enough, you literally have a situation where almost not a single member of these state houses ever faces an election. So of course they can be extreme. That's why they are all over the country. Now I'm going to cut to the quick here so we have time for questions. What happens if we keep having this repeated battle where we're in federal swing states and they're going for broke in every state they can, not just swing states? They're going to try and win Virginia next week, even though it's generally a blue state in a presidential year, aren't they? They don't care if it's a swing state. If they keep doing what they are doing, and every time they win, they suppress the other side, they gerrymander, they lock through an extreme agenda, and we only worry about a few swing states, who's going to win? They are. Over time, they will win. They are like the soccer team, to go to this slide, who's always on offense. Always on offense, where democracy is shaped. Each of these little circles represents a state house that they control on offense. And as I put through here, we're hardly on defense in half these places. We didn't check. They were in the states. Look at this: Ohio, Mississippi, Texas, all of them. The authors of the abortion bans in those states that kicked in after Dobbs didn't even have an opponent the next year in any of those states. We're letting them do it, folks. They're on offense. We're not even playing defense. So to go back to this thing, how do we solve this? And I'm going to do this real quick. We have to see, and this is what my books are about. So if you like this stuff, follow me on Substack, buy the books. We have to see that we are in a battle for democracy itself. They're right. We've been seeing it too narrowly. We're in a battle for democracy itself. That battle starts at the state level, where democracy is shaped, where we've let them run amok for far too long. It's a long battle. It's a battle we have to fight in all 50 states. I normally have a lot, go through this with more time, but I'll just go through it quickly. It's a battle we have to fight. We have to block the shots in these states. Quit only having when we only talk about U.S. Senate, it's like we're only trying to have a better goalie. We need to start blocking the shots in these states where they're taken. We got to run in all parts of these states. They're running their entire agenda through districts that we're not even running in. Of course they're going to win. We got to run everywhere. We got to make sure in Arizona, we have to flip your state house next year. I talk about you guys all the time, but that starts with running in every part of the state, not only in a few places. Number 4, it's bigger than Trump. As you experience there are a lot of people who don't feel like Trump, but boy, are they attacking democracy. We've got to define this as bigger than Trump. And lastly, my hope is once people see that it's a battle for democracy itself, they see that there's a lot more they could be doing within their footprint of influence to lift democracy. They also will see that even if they're not in a swing state, once you see the battle of democracy and the way they're waging it, you see that all of us, from Oklahoma to New York to California, Ohio to Arizona, we're all in the front line of the battle. And that means there's so much more we could all be doing to battle for democracy than typically we think we can do when we only think a few swing states are where the battle's being fought. So that was a very quick run through, believe it or not. And let me figure out how to stop sharing so I can see again and take any questions you might have. Thanks, everybody.
David, that was wonderful. It's really a serious wake-up call to all of us, because we do get complacent with our values and willfully want to believe that the majority of the country is with us. But that's not what wins elections. So, right here, I'm going to give another plug for your PEP Perspectives. It is wonderful. And it's at constant wake-up call that I get from you with information and facts that I need. I see two questions already, Ellen Shama and then Mayor Ginny Dickey. Ellen.
What's the status of Sherrod Brown?
So Sherrod Brown, I would say, is a survivor, and I think it's going to be his hardest race ever, but I think he should be able to win it. And if Republicans keep picking this, I put up a Substack link as well. If Republicans keep picking Trump-like candidates, so here's a quick thing on this. Mike DeWine, our quote more moderate governor, although he's not moderate, but it feels moderate. He won by 26. J.D. Vance won by 6. He felt Trumpy. They are doing much. This is going to be true in Arizona too. The far right Trump candidates do a lot worse in Ohio over time. And if Sherrod in particular faces a Trump J.D. Vance-like candidate, I think he especially has a good chance of winning. So I think it's going to be a tight race. I think it's a toss-up. But I think in the end, especially if Trump anoints a Mehmet Oz, Kerry Lake, J.D. Vance-style candidate, I think Sherrod can win.
Thank you.
David, just a quick statement before you deal with Mayor Ginny Dickey's question, and that is in the chat. There are a lot of comments recommending your books and the Perspective. So make sure you see those.
Okay, I'll put a link up to a website about the books too, and the website also has a lot of my goal in life is not to make money from books; it's to get people to see all this. So if you go to my website, when I'm going to link, you'll see a lot of what I talk about. A lot of the steps I recommend are all offered in the website too, the savedemocracy.us website.
Okay, great. Mayor Dickey, your question.
Thanks. Just, you know, on a large scale, when you see bombs in Ukraine and such, and you think, well, the whole thing is that Putin wants it, but he's destroying it. And then you bring it to the US and you talk about democracy and trying to ruin democracy and not let people really vote. And then I even get to a local level here in my town where the end game seems to be chaos. So why do people want to be in charge of something that's in ruins? What is the real end game? If you're destroying everything, you don't want people educated. You want them forced to clap for you, or you'll disappear in the night. So where are they going? Why do they like
Power?
What's in
power over what? Power over what?
I'm sorry, I don't know. Tell me what town you're the mayor of.
Fountain Hills, Arizona, about 25,000.
Oh, great.
Just a new majority on a council that have just, you know, everything from Hamas to...
You're the mayor and they have a new majority?
Yes, and it never was even put that way until now. We never cared who was Republican or Democrat. Right. Now all of a sudden it's the majority.
I started on city council, and I was a city council member in Cincinnati, and when I started, it was so nonpartisan. It feels like just a different life. So to your question, and it's funny, in Laboratories of Autocracy, my main goal was to describe in painful detail, so people would see it, the mechanism of how state houses are being used in the way I've talked about. There's a lot more detail in that book. But towards the end, I tried to answer your question, which is, well, why? What's driving this? What's driving it is, I think, a combination of players who have all figured out that they will not succeed in a world of majority rules. A majority rules democracy on a fair playing field. Certain people lose, and they're not willing to lose. So one is, I think, the far Christian right world of they're trying to impose through Dobbs and abortion bans and more. And if they can do more like contraception, go back on same-sex, they'll do all of it. They know that they will lose. So the only way they can win is if they create gerrymandered legislatures to pass positions that would otherwise lose. I do think we have a centuries-long problem in our country, to say the least, of a white backlash whenever there is a diverse majority that gets its way. That got us Jim Crow. And a lot of this is a response to Obama winning, not just Obama winning the White House, but a diverse majority electing him and electing people at all levels. And we have a very sad history of this, of a white backlash with some voters that just drives people in a frenzy. And we've seen that ever since Obama won, which is why I say this is all bigger than Trump. Most of what I describe in my book, Laboratories, began before Trump ever ran for anything. And so that strand of white supremacy, which is a minority worldview, knows that it cannot have a democracy and lock in that view. But the other big one, Mayor, is corruption. There is so much, these states are being hijacked for public assets to be given to private players. We've seen it in Ohio, and you're probably seeing all this stuff there. I don't know Arizona as well as other states, but our public school dollars are going to for-profit companies that shower the politicians with some of that money. Energy bills that we pay are going to bailouts. They're loosening laws on regulation. You know, so much of this is driven by the concerns of your prior presenter around climate, big oil, big energy. The whole thing is, it's about, so much of it is about corruption. And these state houses, again, I don't want to speak for yours, but Ohio's, once you have no accountability, they're not about public service anymore. They literally are not. We've had corruption like bribery scandals. We're one of the most corrupt states in the country. But the bigger corruption I worry about is it's no longer public service. They are taking the goods of the public and the powers of the public, and they hand it to the private. Did you all see that Brett Favre got in trouble because he took TANF money meant for those in need and built volleyball courts? Put that on steroids, and that's every state house. They have become corrupted. And so back to your question, those benefiting from that corruption, those grabbing hold of those public assets for their gain, love these gerrymandered systems because these state houses do exactly what they want as long as they get a piece of the public money that flows to the private. So I think you have an alliance of the far right, sort of this. Now, I don't think they each agree with each other on everything, but each of these groups understands that in a world of accountable democracy, that corruption would lose. As your question's perfect. Why? Because when you're giving away all the public goods to the private, the outcomes fall quickly on the public. Ohio schools were ranked 5th in the country 12 years ago. We're now ranked in the mid-20s. Our small towns, the infrastructure is dying. The young people are leaving. So you're right. They're sitting in their own districts. They're destroying the public outcomes. And so they realize if we don't keep gerrymandering, we're going to get voted out. So all of these different motivations all are driven by the fact that if they had an accountable democratic system, these people would lose by behaving the way they are.
So just real quick, the only reward, quote unquote, has nothing to do with wanting to set policy or be a leader in a thriving community. It's so you can have a big car.
Correct. They're not, when they talk about, when these broken, by the way, in Arizona, I will do whatever I can next year to help you flip yours. We need to run in every district Arizona, which helps Joe Biden, it helps Ruben Gallego, and it helps flip your state house. The way, this is a lot longer than I had time to go through. The way we win the battle for democracy is to not only focus on Biden, Trump, it's to focus on all those races across the state and have the extremism that they are about, that contrast be clear at every level. But yeah, they are not. The people in these state houses are literally not about public policy. How do we know that? Because their policies actually lead to terrible public outcomes, but they keep doing them because someone's benefiting from their policies. It's just the private players. So they keep doing the things that aren't serving us, but serve their players. And they keep going. And so when they talk about it as public policy, that's not what it is. It's policy using public assets to support private players.
David, I want to thank you again for being one of our guest speakers. If you want to continue this mind-blowing, dynamic conversation, make sure that you are subscribing to Perspectives. I'm telling you, it'll be one of the most amazing things you've done. David, I would love to have you back
Okay.
to talk some more about Yes, it's been absolutely wonderful. And to all of our people today, thank you so much for being part of our program. And make sure that you join us in November when we have our Indigenous Peoples program with Dr. Millicent Pepion and Dr. Crystal Lee. They are both amazing international leaders in their fields. David, the best of you for you. And please, I will be in contact about having you return.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Good talking to everybody.
Thank
Thank you, David.
See y'all.
Bye-bye.
You have his information.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow, he was amazing.
Wow,
Yes.
right.
Like, yeah. Down ballot, down ballot, down ballot, right? Wow.
And we still have legislative districts in Arizona that have no Democratic candidates for the state legislature.
Yeah.
So
do?
we really,
Oh my
I think
God.
that, I think they're gonna remedy that this year.
Are they?
Yeah. That's one of the goals.
And meanwhile, we have 6 or 7 people for CD1.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Crazy. Okay.
Yes. Good
All right.
point, Sandra.
What'd you say?
Good point, thank you.
Oh, well, I asked one of them in the beginning to drop out. I said, do you really think that you could run against the candidates that we have? I said, there's so many other places we could use you.
Yeah, yeah.
And he has not dropped out, but whatever. I'm not the only one who asked him. It was funny. But anyway, I hope everyone gets their ballot in, but I'm probably talking to the choir.
Sandra, did
Yes.
you, real quick, did you help Myra? Are you in Scottsdale Public Schools?
No, I'm in PV.
Oh, okay, because I hope Myra was able to get help from someone. I'm not in Scottsdale schools, and she wondered to know more
I got
about
my
the
answer.
ballots.